Hi, welcome back to Community Focus here on Channel 6 TV. Kenny Fogel here with you now. We're going to talk a little bit more politics. We've talked about a lot of politics over the years, and again, we've got a statewide races coming up this year. I mean, they're getting eclipsed a little bit by what's going on nationwide in the presidential races. We might touch a little bit on them as well. But right now, we're going to stick with what's going on locally. Fancy Farm coming up in a few weeks, and people usually start kicking things off, and people start paying attention. But we're going to try to get a little jump start on that. We got Audrey Haydon here with us, and Audrey's always been active for several years in the Democratic Party. So I know you keep up with things a little bit and pay attention.
I sure try to, Kenny. I try.
Again, we're not hearing a lot of issues coming out right now because I think both sides are trying to jockey for position. But
sure.
there's people say, well, there's not a lot of difference in politicians. I think you look at Matt Bevin and Jack Conway. If you're paying attention, there's a lot of difference in politicians.
You know, I agree with you on that, Kenny. I think we've had a pretty interesting election cycle so far. The Democrats have been pretty united behind Jack Conway and his running mate Sandy Overly, which is fortunate. Certainly the Democrats have had their fair share of bloodbaths and primaries in the past, but not in 2015. We got to kind of sit back and watch the Republicans really duke it out leading into the primary there. I was a little surprised to see Bevin come out of that, quite frankly.
I was shocked.
You know, and I heard the number that between Hal Heiner's campaign, what he gave to his campaign, and what the PAC spent, they spent like $100 for every single vote that was cast, and he still came in third. You know, Bevin and Attorney General Conway certainly present a pretty stark contrast. You know, I think you've seen in the last week or so, Jack has released a jobs plan. He's putting ideas out there to move the state forward. And then you've got, on the other hand, you've got Bevin saying things like, why spend money on early childhood education because they forget it all by the time they're 8. which I think is pretty contrary to a lot of studies.
Yeah, maybe.
He's entitled to his opinion. Doesn't mean he's right.
Yeah.
So I think that you're going to see in the coming weeks, I know Jack has gone up on TV this week with his first ad. I don't know if you've seen that, Kenny.
I saw the Facebook version.
Yeah, and I don't know. I haven't seen it on television. I've seen the one on Facebook, but I think Jack's going to get out there and keep talking about jobs and keep talking about issues that really matter to Kentuckians. And I can't tell you what Bevin's going to tell them about.
What are the issues going to be this year? There's obviously the ones jump out at you: retirement, connect, right to work. But what are they the issues, or is there anything else out there?
You know, I think jobs is always a big deal. I think especially in Eastern Kentucky, where they're still really, really reeling from losing a lot of those coal mining jobs.
Yeah.
We need a long-term plan on how they're going to deal with that, and I think that education is a component of that I've heard Jack talk about. Technical schools and work readiness, but attracting jobs. There's obviously different ways that you go about doing that. I think that the drug problem is still a really, really big issue. I know that the legislature did deal with the heroin bill. That's a step in the right direction, but I think that's going to continue to be a really big problem, prescription drug abuse, which is something that, as Attorney General, Jack's been very, very tough on. I think healthcare is going to continue to be something that we're talking about. Education, like I said, always a big issue. As far as that, those are really the issues I think that voters are most concerned about, is what hits them in their pocketbook.
Well, I know we talked about Connect, and I know even Chad McCoy, we were talking earlier about how he even agreed it's one of the most successful programs that's been in. But you use the word Obamacare. How much is Obama going to play in, and even Hillary, how much are they going to play in this governor's race? Because people are going to say, hey, you're just another Obama person, a Hillary person. Right now, Hillary's somewhat popular in the state of Kentucky. Obama just struggled.
Yeah, bless his heart, right?
Yeah.
I think the Republicans wish he was going to be president another 4 years so they could keep on running against him. If you listen to all of their campaigns, it was who's going to be tougher on standing up to Obama. But the reality is he's not going to be president after 2016. Whoever we elect governor in November is only going to be in office one more year before we elect a new president. Unfortunately, I do think that's going to continue to play in the campaign, whether or not it's fair. And I think Jack's gotten out there a lot and said, look, I voted for him, but I, stood up to him on issues that matter to Kentuckians, dealing with the EPA, which the Supreme Court ruled last week, in their favor on the emissions issues. So I think it's going to continue to play.
That's the war on coal, right?
Exactly, right. And I think that I think at the end of the day, voters are going to be able to choose between the candidates and hopefully see through what role Obama really plays, which it should be none as far as I'm concerned.
But Bevin has come out with his slogan. I saw just talking about pro-family, pro-gun, pro-life.
Right.
I mean, is he appealing to the Republicans, or is he appealing to, who's he appealing to with that slogan? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I think that certainly if you're pro jobs and pro education, that makes you pro family, right? And those are family issues. I've never heard. I know that Sandy Overly, anyway, Jack's running mate. I can't speak to I don't know about Jack's
Right.
if Jack's been endorsed by the NRA, but I know that Sandy's always been A-rated by the NRA. I think she's pretty strong on guns as far as all that goes. I think Bevin's a very different kind of candidate than we've seen out of the Republican Party. I think
He is.
He's, and I think Republicans are going to have a hard time. He's going to have to appeal to somebody because we haven't forgotten the primary in
We talk
2014.
right to life, not right to life, but right to work. I mean, basically, we're a very strong union area here.
Sure,
Some
we are
parts of the
here.
state aren't. I mean, obviously, but will right to work draw any attention at all?
I just don't think it gets a lot of traction. I don't think that outside of, I think saying that you're right to work or wanting to union bust in essence what it really means. I don't think that gets you a whole lot of votes because I think it fires up the unions to work against you. Yeah. But I don't know that the average voter really gets into that as far as being an issue. It's kind of down in the weeds for a lot of people. So I don't know that gets him a whole lot of ground. The Republicans in 2014 ran a lot of ads. I'm sure you saw on network TV in Jefferson County, at least where we are. That's what we saw. Dealing with the right to work issue, and I don't know that it really gains a lot of points. In the polling I've seen anyway, it doesn't really move the numbers.
So what's the issue? I mean, people are talking education, obviously, as it takes a big bite out of the budget every year. So the budget always comes up as really how are you going to allocate the money? Is it allocated to the Medicaid problem? Everybody says Medicaid's a problem. Retirement system, obviously, is just about to fall apart.
Yeah, that's a huge issue.
It's a huge issue.
Right. The teacher retirement system
system, and well, they all three in bad shape. But actually, the government or state retirement system's in the worst shape of any of them. But the teacher retirement system's struggling as well.
Right.
So, but they haven't gotten into debate over that yet, but I don't know exactly how that's going to come out.
Well, and the legislature this past year took up the teacher retirement system had a proposal for bonding to make up some of the shortfall from the actually required. I mean, you know more about this than I do, Kenny. The required contribution for the teacher's retirement anyway. Yeah. And it did pass the House, but the Senate, unfortunately, doesn't have any interest in taking it up, and I think it's a mistake. They're just kind of, you can only kick the can so far before, you end up in a situation where somebody's going to have to, there's going to be tough choices that are going to have to be made.
Well, the candidates will be out scrambling right now, obviously visiting each county. Well, I understand, I think Conway's visiting Bardstown in August 19th,
I believe he'll be here then, and I'm sure that, I know Sandy will be back in September, and I know that, I'm hoping they'll be here again before the election. I know that the Democrats are having a big event in October, so hopefully someone will make it then. They're out there. I know Rick Nelson, who was here recently. Some of the down ticket candidates are making the rounds. I believe Adam Edlin is going to be here in a few weeks, or sometime in August. So they're all out there working hard, leading up to Fancy Farm, which is really, I guess, the kickoff to the intense campaigning in the fall.
Well, as you mentioned, the down candidates. I mean, we don't talk about them a lot because most people don't even know who's running outside of people that are really paying a lot of attention. I mean, we got the state auditor, treasurer, secretary of state, agriculture commissioner, but. Are they going to be more coattails of whoever the governor's race, or are they going to win this on their own? What's going to be the deciding factor in those races? I
certainly think candidates like Allison Grimes and Adam Edlin are going to be able to turn out voters pretty easily on their own. Right. Especially Allison coming off of a statewide campaign last year has pretty good name ID. Adam, of course, continues to make a great name for himself, cracking down on as the taxpayer watchdog, as he calls himself. He's in the news in a positive way, I think, really being a good steward of state money. So I think they have the ability to really rise to the top on their own. Some of the other down ballot candidates, I think, will be a little more tied to how the governor's race goes. Rick Nelson, of course, has been a state representative for a number of years, has running for treasurer, of course, as a Democrat. Has a really good understanding, I think, of the budget and sort of some of the issues that are important to the treasurer position. But I don't think he's ever run a statewide campaign, so he's really learning. Andy Bashir, I think, certainly, obviously, has great name ID, and he's worked very, very hard. I don't know if you know Andy at all.
No, never.
He's been a very, very hard-working candidate. He's been out there raising money. I think he's raised more money than Jack and Sandy almost.
That's pretty good.
I think, and he's a really nice guy, and I think he does really understand the issues. He's been an attorney for quite a few years. I think that he has a great chance Senator Westerfield, who is the Republican nominee. Certainly, he's an attorney and he understands some of the issues in the legislature. But I think Andy will come out on top in that race. Yeah. And Jean Marie Lawson, who actually just had a baby in the last week, so she's going to be taking a 5-week-old.
Pick a bad time for that.
She's going to be very, very. He's going to be uncomfortable at Fancy Farm at 5 weeks old, but cutting his teeth early, right? Jean Marie was here for the Jefferson Jackson Day dinner, and she's just a very dynamic woman. She's in her, a younger woman. I don't think we've ever had it. Have we ever had a female?
I don't remember one. Not as I know. I can remember.
She's an 8th generation Kentucky farmer. I think maybe 9th generation.
She's very impressive. I talked to her that night at the Jefferson Jackson Day dinner.
So she's great, and I think that's the great thing about the whole slate is we've got 2 women running statewide, which is 3 women counting, I guess, our lieutenant governor candidate for the Democrats. 3 women running, lots of candidates who are younger. I think that reflects a little more on the face of politics to have a little bit of a newer generation taking over. So,
well, I talked to Chad earlier when we were talking about the Republicans. This is going to be a historic race anyway, because both of the races, the governors are from the Louisville area.
That's right.
And we've only had one Louisville governor ever, and that's been in the 50s. No, it's back in the 50s. That's Lawrence Weatherby, and I said he told everybody he's from Anchorage, and nobody knew Anchorage is part of Louisville, so he got away with that. But while we're talking about those now, it just slipped just a little bit. I mean, we got another year to go, but on the presidential side, I mean, the Democratic Party has actually fielded more candidates than I thought they did. Bernie Sanders is
not as many as the Republicans.
I don't think he's going to take away as good to break that many eggs. But you got Hillary, Bernie Sanders, I think Lincoln Chafee is in it, Martin O'Malley, and the guy Webb just got into it a few weeks ago. So, but right now Hillary still seems to be holding her own.
It's been surprising to me how much momentum Bernie Sanders has gotten behind him recently. It seems like Hillary is almost inevitable, which I think is maybe
that's what got her in trouble for 8 years ago.
That's exactly right. And I think that they've, I was able to participate in a conversation with her campaign manager here in Louisville, and I think that they recognize the error of their ways in 2008. So they're certainly not treating it as inevitable, and they really are working, as far as I understand, a 50-state plan to really not take anything for granted. Obviously, in 2008, President Obama was just a fundraising juggernaut. It just was incredible how much money they raised. And so I think she knows that they're going to have to do that. But Bernie Sanders has really gotten a grassroots thing going. And it's kind of interesting to see what will happen with that. I don't think if you'd asked anyone in 2008 who would be the president, it would have said Obama. So, here we are saying, well, maybe Hillary Clinton's inevitable, but we maybe have Governor O'Malley for all we know.
You never know. We'll come back in here this fall. I know Chad McCoy, we talked earlier, so maybe we have both you in at the same time.
Who did Chad predict is going to be the Republican
He didn't come out. He didn't give an answer on that. He said
he's got 19
cases now. He said what the problem was. The problem was going to be there was 2 or 3 front runners, and Iowa and New Hampshire may end up whittling out some of the ones that also ran. So it'll whittle down a little bit.
And Governor O'Malley, I think shouldn't necessarily be underestimated. He's not as much of a household name, of course, as Hillary Clinton, but he came to Louisville, I think, did pretty well at a fundraiser here in Jefferson County a couple weeks back. At Chrissy Brown's house, I think it was. And so, he may have some support out there, and he's an impressive guy.
He is.
Having my husband, when we lived in D.C., he worked in politics for a congressman from Maryland, so he's kind of familiar with that. So don't count him out yet. So.
Well, before we get out of here, I want you to give me a little assessment of what you've seen this past year. Obviously, rate the General Assembly. How did you see anything that actually came out of the General Assembly this year that was good, bad, or ugly this past year? Because I know that's something you've been interested in, is what the General Assembly's been doing and or not doing.
Not doing, yeah. I think it's harder. Sometimes maybe I don't know if they get more done in an election year or less done. It's hard to say. I think the one good thing that did come out of the General Assembly was the heroin bill. That's been an epidemic in Kentucky, and obviously we've seen, I know that the Republicans weren't so keen on the needle exchange program. I think we've seen in southern Indiana with some of the issues they're having with the HIV outbreak because of drug use and dirty needles. I think we see how necessary that really is. I think it was a surprising moment of compromise in the General Assembly, let's put it that way. Of course, the House passes a lot of bills and the Senate won't pass them. And we're kind of at an impasse a lot of times unless it's really, really crucial. I think it's really disappointing they've continued to not act on the pension issues. They've continued to punt on the minimum wage. All of those things.
Well, how critical is it for a Democrat just to keep the House, to keep the Senate, and to have a Democrat sitting in the governor's chair?
I don't think it can be underestimated. I don't know if most people realize that to veto or to override a governor's veto, it only takes a simple majority. So if you could pass it, surely you can get it vetoed. Of course, at the federal level, it's 2/3. Right. So it's a little higher bar. It's a little harder to do. But obviously, if it goes to the governor's desk and it gets vetoed, then it's almost nominal at that point, I don't think it can be understated, and in some ways I think it's a good thing maybe to have the houses in separate hands. It does force them to work together and reach a compromise in a lot of ways. But certainly the numbers of Democrats in the Senate has continued to.
Well, so if somebody's on the fence out there right now saying, it doesn't make any difference whether we have a Republican or a Democrat, how much is it going to affect their life when a Republican does become governor? I mean, what's going to change? I mean, we've talked right to work, we've talked several things, but what's going to change if a Republican is sitting in that governor's office?
I'm not so sure that a whole lot will change. I mean, obviously the governor sets a certain amount of the legislative agenda, right? They can certainly push bills through. I mean, if the Democrats remain in control of the legislature, of the House anyway, I'm not sure that you'll see a change immediately, but I think what will happen is certainly it can't be understated the benefit of having a Democrat in the governor's mansion as far as helping with electing House candidates, right? And so I think if you send a Republican to Frankfurt in the governor's mansion, then the Republicans certainly hope that it's inevitable that they'll whittle away at those 5 seats they need to get the majority in the House. And that's when you will really, really see a change, and they'll start off with, the public schools and go after charter schools and, scale back on Connect if they can, which I think the Republicans didn't know what to do with that.
Well, they want to go back to the federal exchange already, some of them. So
and those kind of things, I think you'll see a lot more changes at that point. Now, in 2016, if they elect a Republican governor, which I don't think will happen, I may be coming back here and biting my words in January, but I don't think that will happen. I really do think that Jack and Sandy will have the momentum they need to carry them into November. But I don't think you'll see those changes immediately.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, we'll get you back in here probably sometime September, early October when things are heating up a little bit. We'll find out if the issues, where they're playing at. Just like the Supreme Court had their issue a few weeks ago about same-sex marriage. Right. Will that play a role in the fall? Who knows? We don't know yet.
And you've seen there's discussion about whether or not they ought to have a special session on that, and so we'll see.
We'll see. And like I said, a lot of things are going to happen between Fancy Farm and Labor Day. So right after that, we'll get back in here. Maybe we'll have Chad McCoy in here and yourself, and I'll just sit back and we'll just let the sparks fly a little bit.
That sounds good.
All righty. Well, we're going to do more of this as we go toward Election Day. And that's again, we say November, but it's really not as far away as you think it is. And we're going to do our best to educate, inform, and entertain a little bit as well. So stick around. A lot more to come here on Central Kentucky TV. We've got Audrey Haydon here with us today talking about what's going on the Democratic side of the House. And we're going to do both of that and all of it as we go on toward Election Day. So stick around. A lot more to come here on Channel 6 TV. Kenny Fogle here. See you later on Community Focus.